Hello. So welcome to this training of Learn TypeScript in 45 minutes flat. Yes, you guessed it right. 45 minutes. You need 45. Give your 45 minutes and you will learn TypeScript, right? So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about, the definition of TypeScript. We'll talk about how to create classes, properties, methods, how to do inheritance, how to put interfaces using TypeScript, how to use the import, export, and how to do on-demand loading using System.js, and lots of other things. So in this 45 minutes, you give your 45 minutes to me and I can at least guarantee that you can write good TypeScript code, right? So let's get started. So first thing first, first we need two things to start with TypeScript. First is, where exactly is TypeScript located, right? So in order to get TypeScript, you need to go to their official website, typescriptlang.org. This is where you can get TypeScript from. And if you go to this website, they have put an official definition out there which says that TypeScript is a typed superset of JavaScript. And finally, TypeScript compiles to plain JavaScript. So if you try to visualize this definition, it means that TypeScript is kind of a language, right? So you go and you write in that language, and when you go and compile, it compiles to a plain JavaScript code. Now the first thing which comes to my mind is that what is the need of one more language over here? If I know JavaScript, I will just code in JavaScript and move ahead, right? Why do I need to code in TypeScript and then compile it to JavaScript? What is so special about TypeScript? So let us first try to understand, why people will use TypeScript and not just code in JavaScript. Now what happens is, people who come to JavaScript, they come from programming languages like C# and Java. So if you see a lot of programmers, who do server-side programming, they use C# or they are using Java, so languages like C# and Java, which are used by a lot of developers, they are coming now to JavaScript, because JavaScript is growing very nice in the browser and people want to exploit the browser power. But now the people who come from C# and Java, they have a very different mentality. They have a mentality that, there is a class, there are objects, there is polymorphism, there is inheritance, there are interfaces, right, and so on. So basically they come from a sophisticated traditional background of object-oriented programming. And the time you come to JavaScript, JavaScript says that, okay, there are no classes with me. So if you want to create a class, that means you create a function, right? If you want to do inheritance, that means you should use prototype, right? So in other words, when people come to JavaScript, suddenly, they are into a different world, where they have said that, okay, so to do inheritance, you don't use the extends keyword or the colon keyword, you actually use prototype. If you want to create a class, you actually write a function. So basically, if you see here, so let me just quickly go to my Visual Studio and let me create a simple project. So I'm going to go and create an ASP.NET web application, and I will say here, learn TypeScript in 1 hour, right? So let me just take a empty web application and let us talk about what kind of pain points a C# or a Java person feels in JavaScript. So let me go here and let me add a simple HTML page. So I'll say learn TS1. So this is lesson 1, okay, TS1. So now what happens here is, so basically if you say, let us say I want to go and create a class called as customer in JavaScript, right? So what JavaScript says, okay, so we do not have a class keyword, you have to write it as a function, customer. If you say that, okay, I want to go and create a property called as customer name and customer code, so basically what you do over here is you say, okay, this dot customer name, right, this dot customer code. If you say that, okay, this class should have methods and properties like methods, then I can say, okay, this dot validate. So you actually write a function inside a function like this, right? So you can see now, this is a simple customer class. If I try to visualize with that word class, it has properties, customer name and customer code, and there is a simple validate function inside this customer class. Now for any person who is coming from a strongly object-oriented programming world, it is so difficult to digest that, okay, this is a class and this is a function, right? It's difficult to digest. So basically, people who come from typical object-oriented programming background, they would like to see their keywords like class, extends, implements, interfaces, and so on. And that's where TypeScript comes in. TypeScript says that I understand that it is very difficult to grasp the concepts of JavaScript, object-oriented programming, right? So here it is a sugar-coating language. So in this language, you go and write class, you go and write properties the way you are doing in Java and C#, and I will compile it into plain JavaScript functions. Now, I would like to give us very, very sincere advice over here, and I would like to sincerely admit over here that there is no replacement to JavaScript. You need to understand the JavaScript fundamentals in depth. If you don't understand JavaScript fundamentals, then you won't understand TypeScript. Remember, at the end of the day, TypeScript is a transpiler. Transpiler, yes, that's the right word for it, because compiler, at least if you ask me as a traditional programmer, compiler means that it compiles to assembly language, which can be executed on the machine, right? A transpiler, if you see that in the JavaScript world, people use this word transpiler. Transpiler means that you convert from one language to other language. So over here, we are converting from TypeScript to JavaScript. So I would give you a sincere advice that please go and watch the core JavaScript tutorials which we have on Questpond, or at least go through those two hours tutorials which we have hosted for C# guys, because at the end of the day, TypeScript will compile to closures, it will compile to ifs, right? So if you don't understand what it compiles to, then you are just coding blindly. So yes, you are getting a feel that you know JavaScript, but you do not know. And at some point, you want to go and make some tweaks, you are then left out on your own, right? So definitely there is no replacement to learn JavaScript. You have to learn JavaScript, right? So I would suggest please go through those tutorials. But here our concentration is TypeScript, okay? So first thing, so if I want to go and use TypeScript, the first thing is go ahead and you can see that there is, if you click on downloads, it goes here and it says that please go and install TypeScript from the Node command. In case you are new to Node, I would suggest that please go and watch our 15 minutes tutorial of Node, where we explain what is Node, what is this npm, what is this install and all that, right? So in this tutorial, I am not covering that. So I would, my sincere advice is please go and see the Node tutorial, right? So over here, I'm going to go to my Node command prompt and I will say npm install TypeScript. So once you do that, you get TypeScript in your computer, right? Now, one is that I can go and start using TypeScript from the command prompt. So I can go and say, okay, tsc compile and all that, right? But I think I'm a Visual Studio guy. I've been working with Microsoft a lot, so I would like to see the power of TypeScript inside Visual Studio, right? So what I would suggest is please go and install TypeScript for Visual Studio 2015. So I assume that you have the 2015 Community Edition. In case you have 2013, then I would say download the TypeScript for Visual Studio 2013 and install in your computer. So basically at this moment I have Visual Studio 2015 Community Edition. So that's why I've installed TypeScript for 2015, right? But in case you have 2013, that's also fine. You can go and install the TypeScript for 2013 as well, right? So you need to go and install TypeScript for Visual Studio. and you need to go and install TypeScript from Node. So these are the two steps which you need to complete so that TypeScript runs properly inside Visual Studio. In case you have any problem in compiling TypeScript inside Visual Studio, please send me a mail at questpond@questpond.com. I would see that, I would try to address your problem, right? So here I am. I have TypeScript. I have everything. So let me go to my Solution Explorer and let us go and create a customer class. Okay, let us see how it works, right? So now a TypeScript file is named with a .ts extension. So I'm going to go and add a new TypeScript file. You can see that there's a TypeScript file here. So I'll say TypeScript file and I will say this is customer. So it says that, okay, your project is not configured for TypeScript. Do you want to configure it? Yes, please configure it. Right. So there it is. And let me go to this learn TS1. Let me delete this because I can have issues. Right. So now I'm over here, customer.ts. So let me go and start creating a customer class. So in order to create a class, you will use your normal class keyword. So I'll say class customer, right? And I will create a simple property in this, or must be a variable, I'll say, right? Or must be we can just see what this output it gives out, right? So I'm going to go and save this, right? The time I save, you can see down below, it says output generated successfully. So if you really see this, here below, can you see it is that whenever I hit save, it is saying that output generated successfully. So in other words, what Visual Studio does, he actually, when you go and save a TypeScript file, it compiles it to JavaScript. So if you go and if you say show all files over here, you will see that there is a JS file here called as customer.js. So this customer.ts has been transpiled / compiled, whatever name you want to use, into JavaScript. So you can see that's a JavaScript code over there, right? So now you can see like how I can go and code in my regular syntaxes like classes and properties, etc. And it ensures that it compiles into a pure JavaScript function. If you see now at this moment, what he has created a closure, and he is using a iffy. Now, if you don't understand what is a closure and an iffy, then you will not understand what TypeScript generates. So it is very, very essential that you understand JavaScript concepts very well. So I would again suggest, please go and see the JavaScript tutorial, or else, at one moment of time, when you start losing control on TypeScript, you'd like to go to pure JavaScript and fix things, right? So you have to know what this guy is generating. Okay, so do not just code blindly on TypeScript. You need to understand the fundamental of JavaScript. Okay. So now let me go here and create a public variable, right? So let us say I want to go and create a public variable for this class. Now, in order to create a variable or a method, the way it goes in TypeScript is you have to first give the name with a colon and then the data type. So for example, here I will say customer name. So what is the data type of this variable? It is a string. Right, there it is. So now if I go and save this, if I again go back to customer.ts, you can see that he has created a property for me called as customer name. So now what I can do is I can go to my UI here. I can pull this customer.js on my screen and I can say here, okay, where cust is equal to new customer. I can say cust.customer name is equal to Shiv. So you can see now I can just create the object in my HTML, right, and start using it, right? So I'll say alert cust.customer name, right? So I'll do a control F5 and this should just show me an alert. So you can see now I created a class in TypeScript. I created a variable. I set a value to it and now I can display it on my screen, right? So I've did a control F5 and I'm trying to build it. Slow. So there my program is running. Nice. And in the same way, if you want to go and create a method. So let us say I want to create a method here called as, let us say, validate, right? So again, remember, name of the method, right? And whatever it is, like validate, okay? And I'll say alert test, okay? So I can now go and say here cus dot validate, okay? So it will just show me first the name Shiv and then invoke the method, and inside the method I'm showing an alert called as test, right? So basically you can see now I have a very simple class and also a method associated with it. Now in case your validate function is returning some kind of a data type, then you can go and define here string. For now example, for this case I will just define void actually, but in case you say that no, the validate will return true and false, so what you can do is you can say okay, this will return boolean, right? And from here you can say return true, right? So remember, you have to define the entity, then colon, and then the data type. So variable colon data type, function colon the return type. In case you want to give some kind of an input to a method or a function, then you can again say here okay, this is the input parameter and it is a number, right? So you can see now here the validate function actually takes an input. So basically over here I need to pass like 1 to 3, okay? So remember, variable colon data type, method colon data type. And if you want to do inheritance in TypeScript, right? So what you can do is you can say here class some other customer extends customer, right? And then over here I will just say validate and I will say this is a new customer, right? So now if I point towards customer and I call validate, I will get something else, right? But if I go and point towards some other customer and if I call validate, I will get some other message, right? So so many things out there. Okay. So let me do a control F5. Right. So there it is. So this one first is test, and if I click OK, it says this is a new customer, right? So basically if you want to do inheritance, you need to go and use the extends keyword. If you see now, this is a kind of a joke, I don't know. TypeScript is supported by Microsoft. It is built by Microsoft actually, and I don't understand that why they did not use the word colon here. I have no idea of it. So if you get the answer for it, let me know. Because if you look at Microsoft, their official language is C#, and in C#, if you want to do inheritance, you can use colon. And I think even the Java people would like to see the colon, must be right. Like I think C++ uses colon. So I don't know why they did not choose colon as the syntax and why they chose extends as a syntax, but whatever it is, so in order to do inheritance, you need to use the extends keyword. But that's one thing, which I always feel like that, why not colon, why extends, right? But whatever, you can do inheritance by using extends in TypeScript. Now, one of the things, which every object-oriented programmer looks at is properties. So basically a property is nothing but it is the set and get. So they normally create the variables as private and they create setters and getters, and inside the set they go and write their business logic, right? So basically so a lot of developers, they do like this, they say private, so they make this variables as private and they create a set and a get around it. So again, TypeScript allows you, so you can say here okay, set I'll say customer name, right? value string. So this is a set, and in the same way I can have a get. So in get, what we do is we say this is colon string, right? So in get normally we return things, right? So in the get I will say here return underscore this dot underscore customer name, and in the set I will say set the customer name equal to the value. So you can see now I have defined a set and a get. So you can see I made things as private, and I've defined a set and a get, right? So again the things will be same here. So I will just say dot customer name is equal to test, right? And alert dot customer name. So the same thing, you just write the keywords set and get. Okay, there it is. Okay, so set and get. One more important thing which I want to bring to your notice here is that all JavaScript code are valid TypeScript code. So in other words, at any moment of time you're feeling that I do not know some of the syntaxes of TypeScript. For example, if you do not know how to declare a variable in TypeScript, what you can do is you can just say, okay, var test is equal to whatever. This is a perfect TypeScript code, right? So all JavaScript code are valid inside TypeScript, because definitely finally TypeScript compiles to JavaScript, right? So this is important, that everything what is valid in JavaScript can be coded into TypeScript, right? Good. Now let us say I want to do exception handling. So basically when somebody goes and sets, let's say, null or something, right, inside the value, I want to just throw exception. So what I can do here is I can say, okay, if value dot length is equal to 0, I can just say here throw. So one is I can throw exceptions, throw exceptions from TypeScript like eval, etc. So there are exceptions given in TypeScript like eval errors, then out of bound index out of bound errors and so on. But I can stick to core JavaScript. I can just say, okay, throw customer name is required, right? And after this throw, basically this code down below will not work, right? So I can go here now and I can say, let us say I will try to set this as null or nothing. So I can say here try, right? And I can say catch ex, okay, and say alert ex, right? So if I do a control F5, I should see a exception. Cool, customer name is required, right? And that's right, because I try to set a null, it throws an exception and it comes here, right? So if you try to see how this code runs very quickly, I can do a F12 and we can just go and debug. So I'm using the Chrome debugger. So what we can do here is I will set the, so here it goes. So I create a customer object, I set a null to it, and it comes to the catch, right? Why? Because it has thrown exception and I get a display out, right? So again, you can use those try catch syntaxes. You get that feeling of that you are inside your own house, So if you're doing C# and Java, class, inheritance, throw, catch, try, finally, and so on, right? Now, one of the very important point I want to emphasize here is that transcript is a transpiler, and it is not like what you see is what you get. Means TypeScript gives you a feeling of something. It gives you a feeling of object-oriented programming. But at the end of the day, it has to compile to JavaScript, and JavaScript is not object-oriented. So a lot of times what happens is you write some code in TypeScript and you say compile. But because if there is no equivalent of JavaScript for that, it will not behave as you think. Okay, for example, in JavaScript, we do not have anything called as interfaces. We do not have like the way we have an interface in C# and Java, we do not have an equivalent of it in JavaScript. So when I go and write interface here, so if I go and create an interface in my TypeScript, if I say interface idle, right? Now, if I go and see in my customer.js, you will not find anything equivalent of an interface generated in JavaScript. So if I do a Control F and if I try to find idle, I don't get anything, right? So basically remember that TypeScript gives you a feeling of object-oriented programming, but at the end of the day, it has to compile to object-based language, and sometimes that object-based language does not support it. So TypeScript is more from the perspective of static compiling. Means, for example, yes, if I go and I try to implement the interface, so let us say I say implements idle, and let us say in this idle I have an add method, then yes, it will show me an error during the compile time, right? So you can see when I say save, it says, oh, I don't see that add is not implemented, right? But there is no code generated for idle as such. Okay, so let us say if I say add here, let's say I implement this add. So if I implement this add, I expect that error to go away. You can see that error has gone away. So it has given you a feel of an interface, because if you see interfaces means that when you implement an interface, you have to implement all the methods. So it has given you that feel. But if you go to customer.js file, there is no equivalent of it. So that is your customer, but you don't find anything idle, etc. You do find a method add, but nothing really equivalent of an interface. So remember that what you see in TypeScript is not what you get exactly in JavaScript. Okay, so you need to understand JavaScript well, and you need to also understand TypeScript well and how they work together. One of the other things which can surprise you is, for example, now we have a protected keyword here. So for example, I can go and say here protected, let us say underscore, or I'll say name1 string, right? So protected means what? Protected means that protected can be accessible inside the child classes. So I can see that name is accessible here, right? But remember that there is nothing called as protected in JavaScript, right? So what happens is you can go and say here dot name, because there is nothing protected in TypeScript in JavaScript. The name actually becomes public. So if you go and see over here in customer.js, the name is here. It is created on this keyword. So I can always go and set this, and I can always go and use it. So basically, when you say that protected, because there is no equivalent, he just makes it public. So if I run this, it just works. Okay, I did not set any value, but if I set that, I will get it. So remember that TypeScript is not like what you see, what you get. Okay, and one more thing which I don't like about TypeScript, and I would like to be vocal over here, is that if you see here, I have declared this variable as private. So I have said private underscore customer name, right? And I expect this to be private. But what happens is when you see inside TypeScript, this customer name is created as public. This is something I don't like about TypeScript, because what my belief is that we do have a private syntax. You can go and create private variables by using the module pattern in JavaScript, right? But if you see, I can happily go over here and say cus dot underscore customer underscore customer name. I can happily do that. So even though this is termed as private internally, right? So it is actually public. right? So if you see this, if I run this, it works. So remember that these are some of the things of TypeScript which I do not like. But if you go to the TypeScript site and if you tell them that, oh, why is the private becoming a public, we can understand protected, because there is no equivalent of protected. They say it's by design. So I think over the period of time, I think they would fix this, they would improve this, because these are some of the things which we would like TypeScript to take care of, right? It is good that you are giving us sugarcoating syntaxes, but that does not mean that you should generate bad code, right? But that is something which is happening at this moment in TypeScript. So remember, it is not in TypeScript that what you see is what you get. Okay. Now, one of the things which we always do in object-oriented programming languages like C# and Java is that we create modules. So basically, we create separate class files and then we reference them, right? So here also in TypeScript you can do that. So for example, now let us say, let me remove all of this code here. So now let us say you have this customer class here, right? And you want to go and create an address class. So what you can do is you can always go and create an address class here, but then what will happen is it will all go into one file, into one big JS file. So what you would like to do, you'd like to go and create a separate TS file for address, right? So what you can do, you can go and add here, you can say add a new TypeScript file saying address.ts, and I will say this is class address, and it has properties like street1, right? Street1 string. Okay. So you can see now I have an address class here, and this address class, if I want to use inside my customer, what I need to do is I need to go and say here import. So what do you want to import? I want to import address from so now where is your address class? Your address class is on the current root. So you will say your /address. So this address over here indicates the address file name here. Okay. What is that? Address is not a module. Very good. You can see now I'm getting an error here saying from the address.cs there is no module inside it. Why? Because okay, you have created the class address, but you have not exported it. Okay, for example, now let us say I have an address class here, I have a database class here, right? Now what I want to do is, to the external world, I want to only export out address and not the DB class. So what you can do is you can go and say here export. So whatever you export is what you can import. So now you can see that error has gone off. So you can only import if it is exported. If it is not exported, you cannot import it. So once it is inside my customer class, I can go and start using the address object. So I can say here create an address object of type address. So you can see now once I reference over here, I can start using it. So basically in big projects, what will happen is you will go and you will create separate modules, and then you would like to import those modules. So remember, in order to get that module inside your TS file, you have to say import curly brackets and the name of the class, and the class has to have the export keyword, or else it is not visible to the imports. So now let us try to use this address object over here. So you can see I have set customer, so that's my customer name, right? And inside this customer we have the address object, and address object has that street1, right? I think it was street1. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to set the value to street1, and let us see if I can get this thing out, right? So if I now try to do a control F5, let us see if this works or not. And what we can also do is we can just do a F12 to just see step-by-step debugging. There it is running. Slow, slow. So slow. Okay. There it is. One is that customer is not a constructor. What is that? Okay. Well, let us do F12. Let us see what the error is. Must be sometimes what you see over there is not something, So you can see that require is not defined. What is this? You can see there is a very typical error. Require is not defined, right? Okay. Now here it is. Now what happens is, okay, let us go and watch the customer.js code. First let us try to understand what is that require is not defined. So if I go to customer.js, you can see that in order to use address, it is saying require an address, right? So it is crashing over here. The program is actually crashing over here. So what exactly is happening? Okay. Now if you see, we have coded in modules. So we have a customer module and we have an address module. And the customer module is using the address module. Now what happens is, when you say that, okay, load customer, then inside JavaScript, when you say, okay, you want to go and load the address object, what TypeScript does is it actually uses something called as the exports pattern. Okay, what is the exports pattern? The exports pattern says that if you want to get that address object, you need to write a require function, which will actually give me the address object. Okay, so in other words, what TypeScript does is it actually believes in modular loading. If I try to simplify the sentence, it tries to actually load in a modular fashion. Load in a modular fashion means on demand loading. It says that, okay, so you want the customer object now, load the customer object. You want the address object now, then load the address object now. So basically it needs a loader. TypeScript needs a loader. When you go and code in modules, these modules have to be loaded by using some kind of a loader like require.js or system.js or webpack. So you need some kind of a third party who will say, okay, go and load customer.js. And then the third party will actually go and also decide how to load address, right? So just by using a new keyword would be very difficult over here. You need to go and use some kind of a loader so that you can load the TypeScript object. So now there are lots of loaders out there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go and use the system.js loader. So let me go and go to npm and install something called as system.js. The system.js loader, it actually loads asynchronously, right? So let me go and install system.js and let me then take this complete JS framework inside my project and let us try to use it. So remember, when you create in TypeScript different modules, it expects those modules have to be loaded on demand, and to load them on demand we need some kind of a module loader like system.js, webpack, require.js, common.js. So we need some kind of a module loader, right? So there it is. It says that I've installed it. Let us go to my C users. So I'm going to go to my user. I'm going to go to my node modules. So inside this, we have the system.js. I'm going to go and copy this. So let us copy this inside my Visual Studio. Bad way of doing it, actually you should do npm inside Visual Studio, but for now let me just go the bad way, paste it. So there it is. So I have the system.js copied here. So I'm going to go and reference the system.js first thing on my screen, system.js. So what we are now saying is, okay, so system.js, you go and you load the modules and I will not be going and using the script tag. So now system.js says, okay, fine, I will go and decide how to load the modules. In case there are dependencies, I will load those dependencies as well. You don't have to worry about it. So now in order to use this loader, we need to use this system object here, right? So first thing what I'll do is I'll tell to the loader, I will tell that everything what is you are loading is a JS file, so that by default the extensions are JS, right? So now what I can do is I can say here system.import, right? So try to load customer.js, right? And once you load it, then we will try to create the object of customer, right? So look at the syntax here. So the first part out here is the configuration. This says that, okay, load the JS files. So in other words, everything is a JS file here, so that, in case when he's hitting like slash address, it will actually become address.js. Okay, or else what will happen is, he will, if you don't give him the default extensions, he will try to hit address and there is nothing called as address, right? There is something called as address.js, so that will crash. So that's why we are saying that, okay, always put the .js after the component name, right? Now what happens is, once he imports it, what he does is he actually gives you a object out here, a module actually out here, right? Or I'll say rather, he gives you out exported things. Okay, exports out here. Okay, what do you mean by exports out? If you see your address.js, whenever any module is exported out, it goes into this exports variable. Look at the way address is coded. On the address class, I marked it as export. The time I put that, what it does is, he puts this address class or the address thing inside this exports keyword, right? So what happens here also, basically, and again the customer.ts also, I need to export it definitely, or else I will not get out there, right? So once you put an export, what happens is, this customer actually belongs to a module. So basically it belongs to the exports object. So if you see here now, he is also a part of the export, right? So what happens here, the system.js actually gives out the exports object, and then from this exports object I can now say, okay, where cust is equal to new exports dot customer, right? So let us try to run this. Let us see what happens. So let us put debug points. So remember, in TypeScript, if you are coding in modules, you have to use some kind of a loader so that you load in modules. You load on demand. And I think this is good, right? Rather than loading one big JS file with everything, now we are loading on demand, right? So let me do F12. Let us see how things are. There is an error. That error is favicon icon. Leave that. So let us go to our console sources and let us see how things are. So I'm going to put a debug point in system.import. I'm going to go and put a debug point here. Now look at this. I say reload. If you go to my network tab here, you can see that he has loaded system.js, but he has not loaded the customer.js and address.js. So that is going to happen on demand. So now think about, you have a project, where you have customer addresses, phones, order, and so on, right? So you'd like to rather load them on demand rather than loading all the components in one go inside the browser, right? So remember, this is a very great thing followed by TypeScript. It actually compels you to load on demand by using loaders like system.js or require.js or webpack. So now if I go and run this, right, so you can see now he has loaded the address.js. Look at things here. After this thing, after that code, when this code was executed, after that only he loaded customer.js and address.js, right? And if you see in the then function, so once the loading is done, then I'm going and creating the object. So you can see now in the exports, in this exports object, you can see the customer is there. If I go to the customer, I can also see addresses. I hope so. Okay, so addresses will be loaded, when I say new. So when I say new here, right, now you can see I have customer, and inside the customer I have addresses, and all my model is loaded. So this is termed as on-demand loading, or loading in a modular way by using frameworks like system.js or webpack, right? So remember, whenever you are separating in separate modules, you need to use something called as system.js or require.js or common.js to load your TypeScript components. It is definitely not easy to hear a video for 45 minutes, and especially if the video is technical. So here is a small ebook from me, and this ebook is an AngularJS ebook. One of the things for AngularJS is required TypeScript. So you already done TypeScript. What I would suggest is that the next goal which you can set for yourself is learn Angular 2.0 and 1.x, right? So here is a small ebook which I want to give you as a gift, to tolerate me for this 45 minutes. So here is this ebook, which explains what is AngularJS. It explains the concept of AngularJS. It has syntaxes and a lot of things out here, right? So in case if you want this ebook, here is a small request from me. If you can go and share this video out in your Twitter account or in your Facebook account, and if you can email us at questpond@questpond.com, we are more than happy to give you this ebook, right? So please go ahead, share this ebook, and thank you for hearing me for 45 minutes. Thank you so much. Keep learning, keep enjoying. Thank you.